The mystic Isis. A mystic is a person who seeks by contemplation and self-surrender to obtain unity with or absorption into the deity or the absolute, or who believes in the spiritual apprehension of truths that are beyond the intellect. The figure of Orset, Isis, or Isis is a complex one, as she is also called she of 10,000 names, with the many myths sometimes differing in detail. So I would like to stress that this talk is based upon my personal experience and understanding of the texts. I differentiate between two dimensions of Isis, the above and the below. In other words, Isis as the mother of creation, an archetype or her non-physical dimension, and Isis on her return journey to unity from the physical realm to the higher spiritual realm and the absolute. That is the journey in which I recognize her as the mystic Isis, and where I believe she can offer a seeker guidance towards unity with the higher self, higher consciousness, and illumination of the divine. Her path is one that is veiled in myth and allegory, as are many of the great truths, which are not to be immediately seen with physical eyes, but are to be perceived through the veil of intuition, contemplation, and meditation. Her story begins with the creation myth. Different versions of the ancient Egyptian creation myth retrieved from coffin texts, pyramid texts, papyri, etc., all begin with a dark, watery abyss of swirling chaos and non-existence referred to as the Nu or Nun. It was unknowable, yet contained all potential for life, and was the source from which all manifestation would later flow in a continuous cycle of birth, life, death, and rebirth. Within that chaos was Heka, a divine force considered the divinity of magic that came into being of itself and empowered the creation event. Heka was considered a neutral force that could be used to cause change. However, the actions and eventual effects could be judged and weighed with responsibility attributed accordingly. In brief, the creation myth relates how a hill emerged from the watery chaos, bearing the primordial egg, from which sprung the all-father creator god Atum. Atum used the power of Heka to produce Shu and Tefnut, and they produced Geb and Nut. Their union produced Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys, which completed the great Ennead. In his text entitled The Great Mother, psychologist Eric Newman states, "The symbolism of the archetype is its manifestation in specific psychic images which are perceived by consciousness." He goes on to say that Isis corresponds to the archetype of the Great Mother, both good and terrible, and that it is no accident that the greatest mother goddess of the early cults was named Isis, the seat, the throne, the symbol of which she bears on her head. And he later adds that the original throne was the mountain. According to Plutarch in his Moralia, and I quote, "Isis is in fact the female principle of nature and is receptive of every form of generation, in accord with which she is called by Plato the gentle nurse and the all-receptive, because of the force of reason. She turns herself to this thing or that, and is receptive of all manner of shapes and forms. She has an innate love for the first and most dominant of all things, which is identical with the good, and this she yearns for and pursues. But the portion which comes from evil she tries to avoid and to reject, for she serves them both as a place and means of growth, but inclines always towards the better, and offers to it opportunity to create from her." close quote. I interpret that as meaning we should look above for the Great Mother as a higher principle of reason or mind. The stars in the night sky symbolizing the many eyes of the all-seeing, all-knowing one, shining light in the darkness. She who rules over the living and over the dead as goddess of the tomb and the underworld is also the gentle nurse who heals, focusing on the good and indicating opportunities for inner growth, offering guidance to create from her and reach illumination. Her open wings are often depicted on the outside of a sarcophagus to embrace and protect the deceased, as with Tutankhamun, and she is called upon in spells in the funerary and pyramid texts to guide or light the way for the deceased on their journey to rebirth. I would like to offer some examples of how the mystic Isis offers veiled teachings and the importance of personal choice on a path towards greater self-awareness and illumination. According to Plutarch in his Isis and Osiris, they reigned together, but Set plotted to kill Osiris and presented a beautiful chest to the court during a festival, declaring that whoever could fit perfectly inside the chest would win it as a prize. When Osiris got into it, Set sealed it tight, cast it into the Nile, and took over the throne. Grief-stricken, Isis resolved to search for Osiris. After much journeying, she discovered the chest had been absorbed into the trunk of a tamarisk tree by the Nile. The great trunk had been cut down and used as a pillar in a king's palace. So, to be close to Osiris, Isis went to that palace, becoming nurse to the queen's baby son. And as she had grown fond of the child, she would burn away the mortal portions of the child's body during the night so he could obtain immortality. However, one night, the queen saw her baby on fire, and her scream of fear broke the immortality process. Isis then revealed herself as being the goddess, and the chest containing Osiris was cut from the middle of the tree and given to Isis, who later gave him renewed life. This myth relates one episode as a simple story. In allegory, I perceive that Osiris and Isis are forces of light challenged by Set, chaos and darkness, who tempts with beautiful false gifts that lead to captivity. Isis leaves the rich palace of knowledge to face the unknown wilderness, searching for the light of Osiris, which is now hidden within the symbol of the tree by the Nile, or flowing river of life. She chooses to humble herself and do good works, helping a child at night towards immortality. Yet the fear of an adult who does not understand what is happening undoes the good work. The mystic Isis indicates a person should follow their own path with perseverance and accept and embrace any obstacles with humility and patience. Her path of the heart is one with a duty of service to others who are progressing on their own life path during the night, time of darkness, or period of incarnation. Fear may hinder spiritual advancement, and the tree carries many meanings, including growth, aspiring to the light, the path of life, and the stages of life. In fact, on the Egyptian tree of life here, 5 birds symbolize the stages of life, considered anti-clockwise from bottom right. The 3 on the right are facing the east and life, and are infancy, childhood, and youth. The one with spread wings indicates adulthood and decision-making, while the bottom one is facing left or west towards death, and is old age and wisdom. The cycle then continues on with rebirth. Fear also plays a role in the next myth, and this version comes from the Metternich stela, currently at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. The hieroglyphic inscriptions revealed detailed accounts of rituals and utterances or spells regarding the healing of poisonous bites and stings, especially from snakes and scorpions. Egyptologist E.A. Wallace Budge tells us in his Egyptian Magic that Isis knew the powerful utterances to ward off evil hap or illness, and could pronounce the words correctly with authority because the god Thoth had instructed her on their usage. According to myth, Thoth advised Isis to escape from Set, and so she fled into the marshes one night with 7 scorpions that had sworn to protect her and her child. Isis traveled in disguise and was nearing a town when a wealthy woman saw her approaching and closed the door to her house, afraid of the scorpions. A servant girl opened her door to offer Isis hospitality, but the scorpions were still angry at the wealthy woman. They united their poisons into the spine of one of them, who crawled under the door and stung the woman's child. The woman called desperately for help as her child was close to death, but no one in the town came to her aid. However, on hearing the lamented cries, the heart of Isis was touched, and she decided to save the child, who was innocent of any insult to her. And Isis called to the mother, saying, come to me, for my word is a talisman that beareth life." She then called forth the poison of each scorpion by name to leave the body, thus saving the life of the child. Here we have a ritual of healing or purification being described. In this case of an innocent who has been caused affliction through the actions of others, but it is also a tale of compassion and redemption. Isis invites the woman who had closed her door to her to go to her for salvation, stressing that her word or power bears life. Isis repeats her commands twice, thus ritually infusing them with greater power. The scorpions had already sworn to protect her, and she summons each one by name to recall their poison, showing yet another level of command over them. She then commands each of them to recall the evil of their single poison and draw it out from the child's body. At that point, she casts it out to flow to the ground, rendering the poison powerless. The full account of this tale is narrated on the stela. The detail of poison being injected into the spine is also interesting, as the term spineless can be used to describe a person who is considered weak or purposeless, while, as we saw, the died or backbone of Osiris also symbolizes stability and continuity of purpose. I would like to add that in Gods of the Egyptians, Bud translated Isis as saying that she set out to cross the marshes at night. I quote, "2 scorpions, Tephan and Bethan, were behind me. 2 scorpions, Mestet and Masetef, were by my side. And 3 scorpions, Petet, Zetet, and Matet, showed me the way." Close quote. I find this to be a very precise description and numbering in her journey during the night, using the prime number 7, which is linked to spirituality and intuition, etc., not to mention the many septenaries in theosophy. And it must point to other significant veiled meanings. For example, it induces me to wonder whether the 7 scorpions and the evil poison they carry could be connected to protection and purification on another level, regarding poisoning of ourself, perhaps symbolizing the need for us to achieve command over the 7 deadly sins of pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth on our path to illumination. Apuleius relates how Isis reveals the path to salvation for those pleading for her help in the only ancient Roman novel in Latin to survive in its entirety, the Metamorphosis, or the Golden Ass. It narrates the mishaps of Lucius, who was turned into an ass for his sins, and his subsequent path to purification and initiation under the precise guidance of Isis. Isis says, and I quote, "Behold, Lucius, here I am, moved by your prayer. I, mother of all nature and mistress of the elements, firstborn of the ages and greatest of powers divine, queen of the dead and queen of the immortals, all gods and goddesses in a single form, who with a gesture commands heaven's glittering summit, whose sole divinity is worshipped in differing forms with varying rites under many names by all the world. And the Egyptians too, deep in arcane lore, worship me with my own rites and call me by my true name, Royal Isis. I am here in pity for your misfortunes. I am here as friend and helper. Weep no more, end your lamentations, banish sorrow. With my aid, your day of salvation is at hand. So listen carefully to my commands." Close quote. Lucius obeyed her precise instructions on what to do to return to human form, and on how to purify himself to become worthy of her divine grace. In the end, he chose to follow her path and decided to work towards becoming an initiate of the Temple of Isis. In conclusion, it is my understanding that an inquiring mind may lead us to search for knowledge and truth in books. However, we need to go beyond the external if we desire to awaken and fuel our inner spiritual light, expanding our consciousness to discover more profound spiritual knowledge. In my opinion, the mystic Isis shows by example that the path to unity is the trunk of the tree, the middle pillar, containing the essence of what is being sought. Hers is a path of the heart, not of the mind. She shows by example that personal determination, dedication, perseverance, and service for good will influence progress on the path to illumination and higher consciousness. We should not be afraid of change or of fear itself. She shows that by making the right choices and through exercising willpower, we can be self-healing and self-creating beings. We only have to believe it, will it, and ask ourselves the right questions while we listen to the voice of the silence, climb the golden stairs, and dare to lift the veil and glimpse the treasures of Isis unveiled. In my opinion, the mystic Isis, by example, has indicated a path of the heart and can still offer us guidance to unfolding greater self-awareness and consciousness today in the 21st century. Perhaps even unveiling insight into some of our big questions of who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? And how can I be of service? Thank you for listening.